On Hot Copy this morning, the Presidential Anti-Corruption Commission recommends charges against officials of embattled state insurer PhilHealth amid allegations by a former official of a multi-billion scam within the agency. Meanwhile, the palace says PhilHealth Chief Ricardo Morales stays for now, as President Rodrigo Duterte continues to trust Morales. According to presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, Duterte appointed Morales as PhilHealth president in June 2019 in a bid to rid the agency of corruption. All right, joining us on Hot Copy this morning after that grueling hearing in the Senate, we have Senator Panfilo Lacson. Senator Lacson, good morning to you, sir.
Karen, good morning, and to the viewers, good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. The numbers that were mentioned in the Senate hearing were frankly very astounding. But let's start with a whistleblower of 15 billion pesos. When I read the transcript, was there actual basis for him coming out with a figure of 15 billion?
As of last Tuesday, he did not detail or give details of the 15 billion funds wasted gone to corruption. But in the next hearing, we expect that he will give us more details on the 15 billion loss to corruption.
What do you think in all the testimonies that was given, Senator Lacson, what was the most striking and I think heaviest in terms of evidence against PhilHealth Chief Ricardo Morales?
Well, three major issues that we tackled, but we did not tackle them enough. One is the interim reimbursement mechanism.
Okay.
There seems to be favoritism in the disbursement of funds, and there's a violation of the original intent of the IRM. Remember, the IRM was conceived or was, the first circular was issued during the time, as early as during the time of Alex Padilla as PhilHealth President and CEO. The original intent was to allow the hospitals or health care institutions to rebuild and continue to operate, meaning those who suffered from a fortuitous event, meaning act of God, calamity, man-made or natural, were given opportunities to rebuild and continue to operate. Now, over time, this was, the usual intent in succeeding circulars like for Ondoy, for the Marawi seats, and so forth and so on. But in this case, they stretch the intent or the meaning of the intent and purpose of the IRM. They included the pandemic. Okay, granting without accepting that it could be allowed. But then they disbursed or gave advance payments to healthcare institutions that do not cater to COVID patients. And they prioritize the advance payments to hospitals, private hospitals, with very low COVID-19 cases.
Okay.
Like in, for example, in Bicol region, this was the first revelations given to us. Only one COVID patient, but how come they were given the priority? And in a matter of 1 week or 2 weeks, they were able to get, after the MOA signing, they were able to receive payments of up to 247 million in the case of the Bicol region. That's 3 hospitals, and 2 hospitals in Region 8 receiving 196 million pesos. More scary, here comes a private dialysis center, a private company. It's just a dialysis center, and yet in a matter of 1 week, they were able to receive or accept up to 45 million pesos. And the total amount released to healthcare institutions catering to dialysis patients, 226 million pesos. Can you beat that? While Hospital of Maynila, they have been, repeatedly requesting for the release of a mere 19.2 million pesos. And yet up to now, or up to the hearing last Tuesday, they had not received. a single centavo.
Yeah. Now, you talked about this actually. You questioned him directly in the Senate, and you got very frustrated because the answers that Morales gave you, frankly, is he said it's financial aid to hospitals with COVID. He said a group of nephrologists actually went up to PhilHealth and asked for assistance. But Senator Lacson, I want to ask you, one, is this a systemic issue? Is this a management issue? Because prior to Morales, isn't this the same expose that Secretary Harry Roque did when he was still a congressman? Essentially, the matter of discretion in choosing who to pay first.
I would say the systemic, because according to, or as per the testimonies of at least two of the witnesses, there seems to be a mafia-like syndicate operating in PhilHealth. And these people, and this syndicate is composed of members of the EXICOM that we intend to dig deeper into. Because if corruption has become systemic in an organization, there must be a deeply rooted group or a clique responsible for the corruption.
Okay.
When I asked General Morales about the release of funds, and he mentioned the nephrologists who requested them to also release funds for dialysis centers, he didn't actually answer the question, because there should be a different mechanism in PhilHealth to address those other cases. Because when we talk of IRM, Memorandum Circular 2020-0007, that pertains solely to COVID-19 cases.
Yes. Yes. Now,
so that alone would prove, and he even admitted to have personally allowed or approved the release of such amount of money, even to a private institution that seems to be the favorite, because there are 5 branches, 2 in Tondo, 2 in Quezon City, and 1 in Baguio City, receiving very large amounts. And when we check their website, this is the B. Brown Abitum Dialysis Center. When we check the websites, there's not a single bed. There were only chairs to cater to dialysis patients.
Yes. Okay, so that's one. The decision he's made opens him to questions of corruption for making those decisions. And also, I want to ask you, there were 2 more points. The anti-fraud officer who's already resigned, also, of course, I won't detail this, but he's repeated a conversation that he allegedly had with Morales of saying to massage, right? To massage an investigation that the PACC was allegedly doing. And the other one that you've uncovered is essentially the IT contract of 2.1 billion pesos.
The 2.1 billion peso budget proposal, wasn't approved by the board, simply because there were no details. And then after that was rejected by the board, they came back, at least Jovita Aragona, the one in charge of IT, came back with a proposal of 1.9 billion pesos, claiming that there's some typographical errors.
Yeah.
So they also rejected that. And the next time around, she proposed a 328 million peso budget proposal with a threat or with an information that the IT system of PhilHealth would collapse if the 328 million pesos would not be approved by the board. But before that, board member Kabading proposed a mere 25 million peso budget budget for subscription. So on top of the 25 million, they approved the 328 million peso budget proposal.
Now, are you convinced, based on the first hearing, that Morales is indeed the new head of this corruption syndicate in PhilHealth? Because the irony of this whole situation is the president hired him to actually investigate the corruption in PhilHealth, to end the corruption in PhilHealth, and he's now being accused of taking over and even being the coddler. Do you believe that he is based on that hearing?
Not yet, Karen. At the very least, he's guilty of omission, the act of omission. Because remember when I asked him about the grossly overpriced network switches, his own head executive assistant, the former head executive assistant who recently resigned, Colonel Etrobal Laborte. No, because Colonel Laborte, I had a chance to talk to him, and he mentioned that he already approached Jer Morales.
Yeah.
And Jer Morales admitted this during the hearing, that he was indeed approached, and he red flagged the cost of the network switches that were about to be procured, again, 15 of them, in the amount of 320,000 pesos each. When in fact, when he simply Googled, choosing the highest or the most expensive brand, which is Cisco,
Yeah.
ang amount lang is 62,000
Yes.
something.
Yes.
1,200 plus US dollars at 51 to 1, 6,200. Well, if we will not be shocked by the overpricing between 320,000 and 62,000, well, Morales should have been, should have initially inquired or conducted or ordered an inquiry at the very least.
Okay. And he
Not
didn't.
only of that particular procurement, but other procurements as well, because
Yeah.
something must be wrong if the overprice is that high.
Yeah. And Senator, in the hearing, Morales actually admitted, and I quote, he admitted in the hearing na parang sinabi niya, nagkulang ako, I have lapses sa paghuhuli, sa mga katiwalian. Parang his sentence sounded something like that. He said it in Filipino. So he admitted to certain lapses in his management, so to speak. Do you believe it's just lapses then? Because it's
No,
either two. He could be corrupt or he's a bad manager. What is it?
It could be both, Karen. He admitted to have talked to Colonel Laborte, but he said, I am not an IT expert. I wouldn't know which figure is correct, between 320 and 6,200. But a simple due diligence would tell him that the correct figure should be 6,200 or 62,000.
And he did not act. In other words, he knew that he didn't act aggressively enough to weed out and investigate corruption in PhilHealth.
Yes. Either one of two things happened to him. Either he is continuously being misled by the Execom, by his own people, or he could have been co-opted already. Well, make your choice. Given the responses that we received or we got from him, I'd like to believe that, because this was testified by Attorney Keith and Colonel Etrobal or Laborte. When we had a conference with them, a Zoom conference with them, they said that at one point, Renelin Xiaopo, the fund management sector head, and General Morales were joking about the dwindling funds in PhilHealth. But in the context of the conversation that they heard, because they were there, they were present, was that they were not actually talking of or referring to the funds of PhilHealth per se, but what could have been gained by some people, sort of saying via corruption. What could have been mishandled, or what could they have gained out of corruption being committed by some people in PhilHealth? That was the context as they understood it. Of course, I forgot to ask Attorney Kidd about that because Colonel Laborte already logged out at that point. Because he logged in as a witness and he logged out.
Okay. Now, Senator, what's interesting is you said he could be both. He could be corrupt, but he could also be a bad manager. He could have been co-opted, and yet he still has the president's trust. Spokesperson Harry Roque says the president still trusts him. The president will rely on the evidence, and we know that the president has a penchant for trusting military men. If you look at Morales' background, other than coming from Davao, he was actually part of the Reformed Armed Forces Movement, or RAM, and he actually at one point even called out problematic issues in the military before.
Karen, I myself, when he was appointed, I expressed support because his reputation in the military, among the officers in the military, it was very good. But in my book, at least this is me, The real test of character of a person is when you give him opportunity for power, for money. A person's character cannot be tested unless he is confronted with these two issues, the issue of power and the issue of money. Kung wala ka pang opportunity, and you are showing very good reputation, you're showing good character, hindi ka pa nag-undergo ng real test of character. Give him power, give him or offer him money. That's the real test of character of a person. Anybody for that matter.
Okay, so if that's the case, if that's your definition, then the anti-fraud officer, frankly speaking, Keith, his allegation is strong enough because he said that Morales asked him to massage the PACC into the investigation over the allegedly overpriced COVID test kits. And then Morales told you in the hearing that there was miscommunication or misunderstanding.
Sorry, I'd rather rely on documents that we have.
Okay.
Because most, if not all, the documents that are in our possession, came from PhilHealth. In fact, just last night, my staff called me. PhilHealth was requesting that we release some of those documents to them. And listen to this, Karina, for them to properly address our questions on Tuesday when we resume the hearing.
Okay.
And I said, what are they talking about? Because all these documents came from PhilHealth. They should do their own research. Now they are relying on us, the investigators, me particularly, to release to them. They're requesting for the presentation that I made, the slides and all the documents. They're requesting for that. What goal, does Morales have to even request me to release to them these documents so they can address? I thought he was requesting because I was about to tell my staff, okay, release it to him. But when I asked, for what purpose? Because I was thinking he wanted to get a glimpse of the document so he can address the people inside the PhilHealth and start investigating. And I'm willing to give him that. But when I was told that the reason was that he just wanted to be prepared, or they wanted to be prepared in the next hearing, I said, what the heck?
So you won't be giving it?
I won't. For
Okay.
that purpose, I won't. Because and I told my staff, you tell them all the documents came from them.
Okay.
These are not documents that we plucked from thin air. These are not documents that we invented. These are official records, official documents from COA. Remember, Karen, the 24 units of network switches that I
Yes. Yeah.
this cost in 2018 because this was already purchased. In 2018, they procured 24 network switches in the amount of 74.3 million pesos.
Yes.
Meaning, each unit costs 3 million pesos.
Yeah, there's
And then he referred to Gabuya, the IT officer. And Gabuya, in his effort to quote-unquote convince us, told the committee that the price that they were looking at in 2018 was 2016 price. So 3 million pesos. And they procured the 24 network switches in the amount of 3 million pesos in 2018. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Or how can we be convinced? Bakit ka magkakanvas ng presyo ng 2016 kung bibili ka sa 2018? But that's not the point, Karen.
Yeah.
The 24 units, as per COA report, because we have a copy of the COA report, inspection report nila, official document, unutilized. Sinabi, nandun pa sa loob ng box yung 24, not necessarily the 24 units, but the network switches that were procured in 2018, nandun pa sa loob ng box, unutilized. And here's the PhilHealth, again procuring 15 network switches in the amount of 320,000 pesos naman. So kung hindi mo na-utilize yung pinrocure mo in 2018, tapos bibili ka pa ng 15 para kumita lamang, Karen, we're facing a pandemic. This is a serious health crisis. Mataas na yung ating COVID cases. Baka naman pwede magkaroon tayo ng moratorium sa corruption. And hopefully, yung moratorium parang mag-serve as a dress rehearsal para maging permanente na yung aversion sa corruption. Patawarin na because this is a health issue. You know, I remember during the budget deliberations for the 2020 budget, this was last year.
Okay.
Ako mismo yung nag-realign. Naghanap ako kung saang item doon sa budget. I was able to realign 7 billion pesos doon sa Universal Healthcare Program ng gobyerno because it is a law, Universal Healthcare Act. And kulang na kulang, kita ko doon, kulang na kulang yung pondo for 2020. Parang we're lagging behind by something like 2 or 3 years. Ano? Nasa phase 1 pa, hindi pa nakaka-graduate. Ang target ng Universal Healthcare Act is to address the health problems down to the barangay level. Eh hindi pa tayo umaabot doon. So sabi ko, bigyan naman natin ng additional funding.
Okay.
I propose naman of more monies for universal healthcare, more budget. Pero ang na-adapt lang yung 7 billion. Pagtapos makakarinig ka ng ganito, so how would they expect me now or the other senators to support additional budget or even, you know, a big appropriations for PhilHealth and for DOH?
Okay. All right. Hold that thought. So,
na-enhance yung computerization system. And we agree. It could address corruption. Pero if you hear an overpricing of, i-compute mo nga Karen yung, please help me compute 74.3 million divided by 24. Parang nasa mga at least 5,000%.
Yeah. Okay. No, all right. Just hold that thought. So you've said it's systemic, clearly. This has been going on through the years. It's an issue also of payouts, reimbursement, fake payments also, fake billings, now procurement issues. Kabading mentioned a mafia in PhilHealth. And then one of the mafia members he mentioned, which is the SVP for Legal, Rodolfo Del Rosario, said hindi nga siya daw yung mafia, hindi totoo yun. And he said that in fact, he is also trying to uncover fraud. So you already have this he said in PhilHealth of all of them trying to uncover fraud. So where will this go, Senator? It doesn't seem that one guy is bad, one guy is good. It doesn't seem to be that clear anymore.
Let the documents speak for itself, Karen. We have the documents to prove that there's grossly overpricing, there's favoritism in the disbursement of IRM funds, and there's manipulation in the of the financial statement of PhilHealth. Year in and year out, they are restating their financial statement. Even COA is confused. No? Hindi sila hindered yung kanilang effort to conduct their audit properly. Why? Because, for example, as testified to by Kabading, di ba sabi niya, nasa mga 14 billion pesos yung difference.
Yeah.
Ang ginagawa kasi ng PhilHealth, Karen, yung kanilang income or equity, binoblot nila. Yung sinasabi lang, meron kaming prior year adjustments.
Yeah.
So they restate their financial statement in the year that COA is conducting the audit. Pagkatapos yung benefit claims, yun ang binabagsak nila. How? Ang ginagawa nila, yung mga accounts payables, di ba obligation na ito?
Yes.
Deliberately, they would not release to the hospitals.
Okay.
Para maging healthy yung kanilang statement, financial statement, yung financials. Okay, hindi ba unfair to sa mga hospitals? Because St. Luke's, for example, yun na lang yung kasi yung alam ko, 300 million na yung kanilang sinisingil sa PhilHealth according to them. COVID-19 ito. Hanggang ngayon, hindi na nababayaran. And then, sabi ko nga, yung hospital naman, I just had a conversation with Governor Ebardone, Eastern Samar. And he was asking me, how come? Because there are 4 or 5 public hospitals in Eastern Samar. Sabi niya, maski isang hospital, mahirap na naman yung kanyang probinsya. At yung mga hospital doon talagang scrambling for funds to continue. Well, hanggang ngayon wala rin na-release. And when I checked with the records, 4 private hospitals nakatanggap na ng 21 million.
Okay, so I agree. No, so clearly the way discretion is a big issue and discretion gives room for corruption. So very quickly moving forward, Senator Lacson, do you think that the president should be open to frankly replacing Morales now? Already now? Because He still has the president's trust, but this seems to be, I mean, the president also stands by Duque. Do you think the president should be open to replacing Morales already?
Well, all I can advise the president is take a look at the transcript of at least the hearing last Tuesday. Kasi sabi niya, unless I see clear evidence or proof of corruption against Morales, then he won't fire the PhilHealth president. So, yun lang. Gusto niya, ipapadala namin sa kanya lahat yung buong transcript of what transpired and concentrate on the responses of Morales and the other resource persons, yung members ng EXICOM, ng PhilHealth.
Okay.
And it's up to him to judge. Kung meron bang, sabi niya kasi nung araw, di ba, just a whiff of corruption. Pag sinabi mong whiff, di ba, yung makaamoy ka lang, you're fired. This is not just a whiff of corruption.
Okay.
So,
Senate
it's very
President.
disappointing because, you know, of course, we do not question the authority of the president. Yung hire and fire authority is always there. It's his discretion. After all, he's the president of the Philippines. In the final analysis, the buck stops, so they say, at least stable, di ba? Pero, pag ganito naman na may pandemya na, pagkatapos ganyan na marinig natin, ewan ko kung hindi kayo na-shock. Ako, I was shocked.
So are you disappointed? I mean, you just said it. You said it's disappointing. Are you disappointed with President Duterte? I mean, he's promised just a whiff of corruption, and you have Morales right now, and you've also criticized the supposed underperformance of Health Secretary Duque, and repeatedly the president stands by him. Are you disappointed already with the president's decisions of not
I already said it's disappointing, Karen. So it goes without saying, I'm disappointed.
Okay, all right.
We're trying to correct or help the president, do some remedial measures.
All right. Senate President Tito Soto says it's time to revamp PhilHealth. Is now the time, or would it be too costly in the middle of a pandemic?
Well, it's more costly if we allow corruption to persist. If we allow 5,000% overpricing, if we allow mismanagement of funds by way of IRM in the guise of an emergency situation, and they can still think of making money or milking PhilHealth out of his funds,
Okay. And what about selling government assets? The Senate President also gave that as a suggestion.
Well, we already said, the senators already said that we are supporting the president all the way in addressing the pandemic. But if we see violations or corruption issues not being addressed properly, then how can we continue? For example, we are about to pass again. We already passed on third reading, yung bayanihan group. And sabi nga nila, how much debt are we in now? 9 trillion? I remember during our last year's budget deliberation, nasa mga 7.8 lang tayo. So utang tayo ng utang, and we owe it to the next generation of Filipinos na mag-bequeath naman tayo ng maganda situation. And kung iiwanan natin sa kanila 9 trillion pesos or 10 trillion pesos ng utang, and we see corruption issues not being addressed properly, well, I think at the very least, we're being very unfair to the next generation of Filipinos.
Now, Senator, just a clarification, because what came out in the hearing also sowed fears, among contributors of PhilHealth, among its members. Like, for example, the actuarial life, you had one of the officers say that actually PhilHealth will be in the red by 2021, that actually the government should subsidize PhilHealth by 71 billion. If not, PhilHealth will fold. And then then you have Senator Recto coming out and saying, nope, you have a reserve of 110 billion. What is it really? There seems to be a lack of transparency, or at the very least, clear accounting with how PhilHealth does its numbers.
But even COA, as I told you earlier, they're confused in the conduct of their audit because of, regular restating of financial statements. as per board member Kabading, di ba sabi niya, ang estimate niya, because ang record sa amin, ang debt to equity ratio ng PhilHealth nasa 1:0.99.
Yes.
Meaning, ang utang ng PhilHealth, kung 100 pesos, 99 centavos o 99 pesos na lang yung kanilang capability, yung financial capability. But si board member Kabading, kasi CPA naman siya, he made his own calculations. Ang sabi niya, no, it's not 1:0.99. The actual debt to equity ratio of PhilHealth is actually 1:0.67. Meaning for the 100 peso debt ng PhilHealth, ang kanilang equity nasa 67 pesos na lang. Eh kung yung statement na by 2022, bangkarote na, indirect na, hindi ba it's short of saying na as of now, even as we speak, nasa indirect na yung PhilHealth.
Okay, so it doesn't have reserves. Okay, go ahead, sir.
Look, ang practice kasi nila, yun nga, they withhold payments to hospitals and disbursements. These are reimbursements. Because they're investments, because they're allowed to invest in time deposits, government funds. Ang ginagawa kasi ng PhilHealth, sa halip na i-adjust nila o i-manage nila yung kanilang investment maturities, yung maturities sa investments nila. Say time deposit, sabi nila meron 70 billion. It's the other way around. Ang nag-a-adjust yung mga hospital, teka muna kayo, mag-tayo dyan, kasi hindi pa nag-mature yung aming investments. Hindi ba dapat, kung magaling kang manager, even in private corporations, yung schedule ng maturities mo, yun ang i-adjust mo doon sa needs ng client mo. Sige mo. So, and this is being deliberately done kasi nga, gusto nilang palabasin na maraming pera yung PhilHealth. Procure kasi baka mamaya hindi sila makaprocure ng equipment na dahil sabihin, indirect na nga kayo, ba't pa kayo magpo-procure? So I think there's always a reason for all this massaging of financial statement, manipulating of their resources, yung records ng resources. So meron talagang purpose din yun. And one purpose would be para tuloy yung ligaya nila by procuring in grossly overpriced items. Nobody will argue that they really need to computerize, enhance their computerization system or their IT system. Wala namang argument dun eh. Ang problema, ginagastos nyo naman kung saan, hindi naman kailangan. Look, 734 million. Kasi yung kanilang, yung ISSP, Information Systems Strategic Plan, medium term yun, subject to the approval of the ICT. After all, the ICT is the primary agency of the government. So, it was discovered that 734 million worth of items hindi na labas doon sa inapprove ng DICT. And that's one of the reasons why the board rejected the budget proposal as presented by Aragona. And in the exchange of letters between General Morales and board member Kabading, merong accusation si board member Kabading doon. Sinabi niya, you repeatedly endorsed yung procurement. And yung letter naman ni President Morales, and he did not respond to this squarely, sinabi niya doon na ina-acknowledge niya na merong mga issues of irregularities. And parang nagtanong pa siya, are you telling me na complicit ako rito? Now, when you are the CEO, you are the president, at meron ka ng information, meron ka ng alam na yung mga board members para nagdududa na sa'yo. Di ba? It should be time for you to conduct an investigation. But, after that, sabi nga ni Kabading, in his letter, I would like to quote him, you repeatedly endorsed the procurement of IT system, of IT equipment. So, if you were to conclude, anong maging judgment mo on Morales?
Okay. Regarding that IT system, I know that they added 700 plus million. That wasn't in the original, correct? That wasn't in the original amount. Has it been proven, or will there be documents, or will there be proof that somehow Morales has something to gain by this IT project?
Not muna doon sa something to gain. Pero official records ito, easily accessible yung documents eh. ito yung listahan na in-approve ng DICT. No? Ito yung pinapresent sa board na merong 734 million pesos worth of equipment na wala doon sa in-approve ng DICT. Tapos merong overpricing na 98 million pesos.
Yeah, it's 98 million overpriced.
Board member Cabadin detailed because he requested a few minutes to present his slides. Meron nga doon 5,000 naging 5 million.
Yes. No, 500,000. Basta dinagdagan ng mga zero, 3 zero. No. So if you look at that alone, by these documents and the allegation of the certified public accountant, is it fair to say that technically speaking, Morales technically should be fired already based on this alone?
But what ang tanong doon, Karen, why would he repeatedly endorse such faulty budget proposal?
Why do you think?
Either yun nga, he allows himself to be continuously misled by his own people, or he could be co-opted already. Take your pick.
All right. Okay, let's move forward to the death penalty. Where do you stand when it comes to the death penalty today? Do you even believe that it should be discussed now?
Yes, it is being discussed actually in the House, and it is being discussed in the Senate. We only have to resolve who will sponsor it on the floor, because the bills, and one of the bills is under my authorship. I also filed a bill to again reimpose the death penalty, and we have not resolved who should sponsor it, because Senator Dick Gordon, being the chairman of the Committee on Justice and Human Rights, is supposed to sponsor it on the floor and defend it on the floor. But the reason is that he is against it. Okay. So how can you defend something that you do not believe in? So we are now trying to resolve whether a subcommittee chair would be appointed. Remember, this is not something new, because in the case of the National ID System, it was referred to his committee. But at the time, I think he was preoccupied with so many things as chairman of the Blue Ribbon. So I was designated as the subcommittee chair, because I was vice chairman of the Committee on Justice, and I defended on the floor. Okay. National ID System.
Yes. Now, wait, with the death penalty, let's stick with that. Do you only want it, Senator Lacson? Do you believe in it for high-level drug traffickers only? And can you detail exactly, for example, who do you consider as a high-level drug trafficker, or does it cover other heinous crimes?
Yung bill ko, it covers other heinous crimes, even corruption, even plunder. Look, Karen, I base my
so tatlo sa inyo, sir. High-level illegal drug trafficking.
Heinous crimes. Kasi ang original naman yung heinous crimes eh.
Pero kasama murder, kasama rape, lahat yun.
Yes.
Okay.
Yung kasama. But the consensus among senators is just to limit it to high value target. The drug lords, yung talagang malalaki. Hindi yung
for it to pass.
Hindi yung drug pusher lang na say of course it will undergo some refinements. But I'm basing my my support to the death penalty on my experience as a law enforcer. In 1999, when Leo Echegaray was meted out the death penalty and executed actually, we noticed do sa mga presinto, there was an upsurge of complaints for rape. Ang sinasabi ng mga nag-criticize, it is not a prevention or preemptive measure, because lalong dumami yung rape cases. No, it's not the case. Dumami nag-report even rape cases committed 5 years ago. 5 years before 1999, before the execution.
You're saying they found a voice?
Yes, they were encouraged. Even, rape cases committed or rapes committed 2 years, 3 years, 5 years ago, they started trooping to the precincts to file a complaint. Okay. Because they were, something could be done pala.
Okay, so very quickly, just 2-3 points on this because we don't have enough time. I've seen the numbers and reports have come out that the death penalty, whether for drugs or other heinous crimes, don't actually prove that the crime itself, that the numbers go down. Would you agree with that?
I haven't seen the numbers, Karen. I'm only basing my support to the death penalty law doon sa personal experience ko.
Okay. The other thing is Senate President Tito Soto said the Senate is 50-50 and it has a bigger chance of passing if the death penalty is only limited to high-profile drug traffickers. Would you, let's say, would you sponsor something like that? Would you agree to that and exclude all the other heinous crimes, or you want all the other heinous crimes too, Senator?
If I had my way, all other heinous crimes. But the consensus among senators who are supportive of the death penalty bill is to limit it to high-value targets in illegal drugs. So, but there's so many ifs. Senators can change their minds depending on the progress of the deliberation on the floor, because there's so many new information that would come out, so many statistics and so many developments that could come out during the deliberation, even on the floor.
Okay. Are you optimistic that the death penalty can actually be passed during President Duterte's time?
I cannot say that because we are a collegial body. Both House of Representatives and the Senate are collegial bodies. And I cannot speak for my other colleagues kasi yung iba, they're mum on their position as of now, and they want to hear the debates.
Okay. Going back now, before we close, I want to ask you on Secretary Duque, because you've been actually hammering him every single day on Twitter.
Hindi naman, Karen. Hindi naman ganun.
Every other day, to the point, tinanong mo na, ano bang agimat ang meron siya?
Yeah.
Okay, the president said, what do you want me to do? I can't fire him. And you have netizens actually supporting you. And I've seen articles of netizens outlining supposed or alleged, faults, lapses of Secretary Duque, outlining them since January. I just want to ask you, number one, is it even wise to replace Secretary Duque in the middle of the pandemic? Something practical.
The structure is there. No? The organization is there. No, I don't believe that changing the leadership would affect adversely the efficiency of the department. Because andyan well-established naman yung structure. There are so many qualified members of the staff. Even most of them are civil service eligible. Andyan mga technocrats and mga professionals. So the first original sin or the original sin of Secretary Duque, if you recall, the Wuhan couple who traveled from Cebu to Manila, walang contact tracing. When we asked him during the Senate hearing, ilan na yung contact trace, ang sagot niya 70%. And he started pointing or tossing the blame on the airlines, tapos yung CAAP, and
But doesn't the secretary in a way follow the president's stand when it comes to China? I mean, in those early days, many people who suggested that flights be banned from China were also, publicly bashed and trolled. And also Malacanang was also saying that it was wrong to treat China that way. This was just, I remember, early February.
Yeah.
And then Malacanang changed at its tone at one point.
Well, Secretary Duque is the principal advisor of the president when it comes to health issues, especially during the pandemic, yung COVID-19. And dapat siya yung nag-advise sa presidente na i-lockdown muna natin to Philippines, especially from tourists coming in from China, because doon nga nag-originate yung wala namang wala nang argument doon na talagang it originated doon sa Wuhan, China. Pero hindi ka agad nag-lockdown, you still allowed, and you even issued statements supporting or rejecting the idea of closing down our borders from Chinese tourists.
So, yes, that's the first one, and so many other issues that they brought up against Duque.
That's correct.
Is there anything you want Secretary Duque to do? Right now, we're in MCQ, numbers of COVID are rising. People have called for him to resign. He said, I serve at the president's pleasure. What act can he take to make it right for you?
Well, at least he has already admitted that the DOH has to re-strategize. That's good enough for a start.
Okay.
But will they really do it? That's another question. Let's, at this point, when we are already tops in Southeast Asia in terms of infection, di ba?
So that's one, the re-strategy. Last words, what would you want to see in terms of the IATF as a whole? We can't, you have some critics that have said, we can't keep going on lockdown every time numbers rise with COVID. What would you want to see, Senator?
Between human life and the economy, I'd rather choose the former. We can sacrifice, and government can be more choosy in providing subsidies. Meaning, kasi marami ring issues do sa distribution ng social amelioration program funds. Ano? So, if government can, kung hindi na kayang bigyan lahat yung dapat bigyan, at least those who need it most, and yung basic necessities, at least ma-address man lang. No? And this is where, by now, dapat yung government has enough database, no, sa data management nila who to provide subsidies at this point. Ano?
The president, just before we go, lashed out at health workers for the letter, the open letter they wrote to him before the MCQ, which led to this MCQ. What's your reaction on the president lashing out on health workers, saying that, you know, if you want to call for a revolution, so to speak, and he saw it as a threat?
Well, the mention of the word revolution got the eye of the president, you know, but my heart goes out to the health workers because we've heard and seen.
But I don't. The health workers didn't mention revolution, Senator. Just to clarify, I saw the letter.
Okay, I didn't touch
okay.
that.
Go ahead.
You know, that was the issue. I think that got the eye of the president.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, it is this point in our history that we should support our health workers all the way, because we've seen human interest stories of health workers. Ano? Kaya na-mention yung hospital ng Maynila because I read somewhere na mayroong health worker naglalakad doon sa hallway ng Mart doon sa hospital ng Maynila. And nakita niya, kaliwa kanan, puro COVID-19, but hindi naman siya nag-waiver. Sabi niya, trabaho ko ito. But he was so fearful na baka ma-infect siya. Kasi nga araw-araw, yun na yung daily minute niya. So, if that's not enough heroism, I don't know what is. You know?
All right. On that note, Senator Panfilo Lacson, I want to thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.